There are wounds that never bled, scars that no one ever saw, and childhoods that were never truly lived, just endured, piece by piece, breath by breath, in the quiet spaces between neglect and survival. This is not a story of abuse or abandonment in the way you might expect. It's not about locked doors or bruises hidden under sleeves. It's about something quieter, more insidious, the slow erosion of self when love is conditional, inconsistent, or simply absent. This is the story of growing up without knowing what it means to be held, not just in arms, but in presence, in safety, in belonging. I was 7 when I first realized that my body knew how to brace itself before my mind could catch up. That I flinched at sudden movements, even from people who said they cared. That I smiled too much, not because I was happy, but because I learned early that joy made me easier to keep around. I didn't know then that this was trauma. I only knew that if I could make someone laugh, maybe they'd stay a little longer. Maybe they'd forget to leave, but they always did. The hardest part wasn't the pain, it was the pretending. Pretending I was okay when I wasn't. Pretending I didn't notice the way adults looked at me when they thought I wasn't watching. Pretending that birthdays without cards, holidays without hugs, nights without goodbyes didn't hollow me out from the inside. I became an expert at disappearing into corners, into books, into silence. Because when you grow up without parents, without roots, without someone who stays you, learn that your presence is not guaranteed. You learn that your worth is measured in how little you ask for. And so I asked for nothing. Not really, just space, just time, just the illusion of safety long enough to believe, if only for a moment, that I belong somewhere. But healing doesn't begin in pretend spaces. It begins in the raw, unfiltered truth of what we survived. And the truth is, I never got to have a childhood, not one that was mine. Mine would have been messy and loud and full of scraped knees, and bedtime stories whispered through sleep-heavy voices. Mine would have been filled with mistakes and second chances, with someone showing up even when I failed. But instead, I grew up in borrowed rooms, on borrowed time, in homes where I was tolerated more than loved, where I was seen but never truly known. That kind of upbringing leaves behind invisible fractures, the kind that don't show up on X-rays, but echo through every adult relationship, every job interview, every late-night panic about whether I'm enough, whether I deserve to be here, whether I've already used up all my chances. Healing isn't linear. It doesn't come in neat chapters with tidy endings. It comes in waves and moments when you realize you're still apologizing for existing, when you catch yourself shrinking to make others comfortable, when you feel the ghost of a goodbye that happened decades ago. Because grief doesn't age. It lingers, it waits, it claws its way back in when you least expect it. I used to think healing meant forgetting, that if I could just move forward, build a life that looked like success, surround myself with people who seemed stable, I could outrun the past. But trauma doesn't care about your achievements. It doesn't respect your resume or your carefully curated Instagram feed. It shows up in nightmares that feel too real, in the way you hesitate before letting someone get close, in the ache behind your ribs when you hear a child cry in the next room and feel something break open inside you. Healing isn't about erasing the pain. It's about learning to live with it differently, to stop seeing your scars as proof of failure and start seeing them for what they are, testaments to survival. Proof that you carried a childhood that was never yours to carry and still found your way here, still found your voice, still showed up, even when everything in you wanted to disappear. It took me years to understand that I wasn't broken. I was simply wounded in places most people never see. Places that required more than time to mend. They required honesty, courage, compassion. The kind of compassion I had never been shown, but desperately needed to give myself. Therapy helped, journaling helped, sitting alone in the dark with my thoughts and allowing myself to feel everything I had spent a lifetime running from that helped the most. Because healing begins when we stop silencing our pain and start listening to it. When we stop blaming ourselves for surviving. When we recognize that our reactions aren't flaws, they're adaptations. Survival instincts carved into our bones by years of navigating a world that never quite felt safe. And slowly, painfully, I started to reclaim myself. Piece by piece, memory by memory, breath by breath. I let myself mourn the childhood I never had. Let myself rage at the unfairness of it all. Let myself cry over things no one else understood. And in doing so, I stopped carrying the weight of shame. I stopped believing that my need for love was weakness. I stopped waiting for someone to fix me and started realizing that I was already whole, just buried beneath layers of survival. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you how to survive. Before you learned to hide your tears, before you silenced your voice, before you believed you had to earn affection with good behavior. It's about returning to the parts of yourself that never left, even when everyone else did. And now, as an adult, I find myself rewriting the narrative, building a life where love isn't conditional, where safety isn't earned, where family isn't defined by blood, but by those who choose to stay, who show up, even when it's hard, who hold space for my messiness, my fear, my healing. There will always be days when the past finds me, days when I wake up feeling like a child again, lost in a house that never felt like home, days when I question whether I'll ever truly belong. But now, I know that healing isn't about reaching some perfect endpoint. It's about progress, about choosing to keep going, even when the road is uneven, even when the memories still sting, even when the silence feels too heavy to carry alone. To anyone who grew up without parents, without consistent love, without the luxury of unconditional support, know that your pain is not your fault. Know that your scars do not define you, though they shaped you. Know that healing is possible, even if it takes years, even if it takes lifetimes, because you are not alone in this. There are countless others walking the same path, carrying their own invisible wounds, whispering their own silent prayers for peace. We are echoes of the unheld, but we are not silent anymore. We are learning to speak, to heal, to rebuild, to love ourselves in ways we were never shown, and in doing so, we are creating something new, a future where our children won't inherit the silence we once lived inside, a future where love doesn't come with conditions, where safety isn't earned, where childhoods are allowed to be messy, imperfect, and wholly theirs. So if today finds you hurting, if today reminds you of all you never got to have, know that your story matters. Your survival is not an accident. Your resilience is not accidental. You are here, alive, breathing, rewriting your ending with every step forward. And that, above all, is the most powerful thing of all.